one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
First item on our agenda is bid opening for County Road 23.
Morning, Dirk. Hi there. I got a bid tab here with 8 potential slots for bids.
Fill them up.
I'm not sure I know 8 companies that do this process, but...
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we get any bids? I believe we got one.
Can you remind us a little bit about the project? How many miles and...
It's an 8-mile project. It's on County Road 23, or the Warner to Fernie Road, but we're going to go 8 miles, which will get us over to 16 to the intersection there at the river bottom.
10 to 23, right? Or 10 to 16?
10 to 16. It'll be 8 miles on 23. What this process basically does, and one reason why it's attractive, has to do with the condition of that road, with a lot of depressed cracks but a lot of in-place asphalt. So what this process is going to do is utilize the in-place asphalt. We'll mill up about 3 inches of it. Goes into a hopper, gets sized, gets crushed, gets some oil added to it, goes in the paver, and it's all one process. So I would expect that we're only going to be, provided goofy stuff doesn't happen, which, you know, that never happens, but it shouldn't be more than a couple of weeks of actually affecting people on the road, and then the county will come in and put a final top on it. Hopefully it'll be a chip seal or 2. If we really had to, and I would think in the next couple of years, then we'll put a thin overlay on it. But we'll see what the number looks like, but that's basically what the process is.
The road's not broke up, it's just really rough.
Yeah, it's the cracks. The area between where the cracks are is not really that bad, but the frequency of the cracks kind of it's a little bit beyond what you should be doing for trying to crack seal it and make it last longer. If we would have just overlaid it like we do a lot of stuff, which all we're doing is making the road higher, those cracks are going to show back up in a short period of time. So we wanted to do something that would address the condition of the road below before we, move forward and put a top on it. So, all right, is that enough? Or?
Yes, thank you.
You probably just wanted to know it was on Road 23 from...
No, 8 miles.
8 miles.
And I got square yards here.
Yep.
Okay. All right, sealed bids will be received by the Brown County Commission, Brown County Courthouse, Aberdeen, until 8:45 a.m., 8th of May, 2018, for the Brown County Highway 23 cold milling and cold in-place asphalt recycling project. Okay. All bids will be publicly opened and read aloud. The project includes approximately 115,000 square yards of cold milling asphalt concrete and approximately 113,500 square yards of cold in-place asphalt recycling on Brown County 23 between 387th Avenue and 395th Avenue. Each bid shall be accompanied by a bid security. Successful bidder will be required to provide payment in performance bonds as described in the bid document. Someplace on here, there must be the commission reserves the right to reject. Oh, here it is. Brown County reserves the right to accept or reject any or all bids as set forth in the bid document. Okay.
First bidder is Mid-States Reclamation. This company we've actually done business with dating back about 15, 18 years. They used to do a lot of our full depth reclamation for us.
Where are they out of?
They're out of, is it Lakeville?
I got it. Lakeville, Minnesota.
And then they have a regional office in Spearfish that they address stuff in the West River and in the oil patch and stuff out there.
Okay.
That's good, Don.
There's a bid bond. Okay, this Mid-States Reclamation, total bid is $752,452.60. $2.60.
Nice.
And that is our only, that's actually my number because they were,
Okay.
but we are 50,000 below the engineer's estimate. So, I would like to, well, you guys are having your next thing here, because I gotta stick around for my, what's that called, my annual review. I would like to just look at this, make sure the numbers are okay. I have no reason to, I mean, the number's palatable and everything, but I just want to make sure the math's right quick and then come back and recommend approval following your next thing, if that's all right with you guys.
While you're here, where you at on load limits?
We took them off yesterday morning.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I have to admit, it wasn't, I could have, wouldn't have broke my heart to leave them on another week, but there's some areas that it came out okay, and others we might have a few challenges, but we can get asphalt now. I got a load of oil coming in tomorrow, and that's the other thing, is I don't like taking them off until we have the ability to patch the roads, so.
They can make big copy too.
Okay.
So, do we need to move to defer, or can we just wait?
Should.
Move to defer.
Second.
Moved by Sutton, second by Fishback to defer the bid on County Road 23. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much.
We'll hear back from you after our next agenda item.
That engineer's estimate on there, it was a little bit of a crapshoot because this type of work isn't done around here. It was hard for us to get a solid number, but obviously we were in the ballpark there. Just to let you know, for a point of reference, a 2-inch overlay at that location would run us about $130 a mile for 8 miles. Would be 1.1 million, and that still doesn't do anything with what's going on underneath the road. That's just putting another 2 inches of asphalt on the top.
But you're saying this is a better deal?
Well, and I'm just saying, I think we have to have some value here that is for a point of reference. That's like $500,000 less than what the alternative is if I use what we normally do. So that's why we're looking at this.
Have we done this with any other roads in Brown
No.
County? So
There's
this
only
will be a good test factor. If it holds up well, we may have some savings down the road the next year if this works out well.
Yeah, actually, we were out on Brown County 13 on Friday, just spinning a few cores in that, going out to Richmond, and there's about 2 inches more. I mean, it's 6 inches asphalt all the way along there. I didn't know that. So that road might potentially be a candidate for a similar process, and we're going to look at do the same evaluation going from Stratford over to 37. Now, we've got a couple miles in there that we fixed recently in the last couple of years that you wouldn't, like right there at Strat, that first mile is not too bad. And then off by that last bridge we put in, there's a 1.5 miles that's not too bad. But the other 9 miles that's in there, if there's enough asphalt there, I would think that would be a candidate for this too. But, you know, we just looked at the number. We should maybe see if they can build it first before we get too excited. But I have reasons to be optimistic, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Ready for recording?
Next item on the agenda would be Harry Ferris and Roy Larson discuss Ray Larson to discuss ag assessments.
Good morning. Sit in here.
Yep.
Can I sit by you?
Behave yourself.
Morning, Harry.
Morning.
Morning, Bob.
Morning. Where's Harry at?
Yeah.
Harry, get up here. You're the one that called me.
You wanted to be called.
Well,
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
And we're here to discuss ag land assessments.
That's correct. I just wanted to share with you a few thoughts, and I really was inspired by Travis's article a few days ago in the paper. And I thought, you know, maybe instead of sitting back, maybe it's time to come in and share a few thoughts with all of you, because maybe I have been derelict in my responsibility in sharing my thoughts. So Harry happened to call me and say, Ray, you got time to come with me to the commissioners meeting? And I said, yeah, I got time. And so I'd like to share with you some thoughts that I have, and we maybe can discuss some things. First of all, I'd like to thank Harry and commissioners for time to come and sharing some things. I'd like to apologize for not coming sooner. Maybe I should have been here sooner. Had I known that I, as a taxpayer, was being overtaxed, I would have been here sooner, okay? So with that, after much consideration and frustration in the matter of Brown County unlawfully assessing land taxes over 15 townships over the last 8 years, I have a question for you. How would Brown County and their legal team proceed in settling a land owner who had unlawfully underpaid taxes? Let's assume this person underpaid his taxes for 8 years, not following South Dakota tax laws, and was audited by the state of South Dakota every year. I think in this scenario, Brown County's responsibility would be to sue the landowner for fraud, demand payment, interest, possible penalties. Brown County would also possibly demand the state of South Dakota auditors be liable for a poor job of auditing. How can Brown County expect the landowners to challenge land tax laws the last 8 years when I don't make the laws? By the way, the state of South Dakota doesn't know how to audit the laws that are in place. Face it, if 15 townships in Brown County were overtaxed, that means the balance of the township were undertaxed. And no one wants to bring that subject up. That's where the state of South Dakota comes in. Legislature passes the laws and the auditors are to administer and audit the laws. State of South Dakota Auditor's Office was derelict in their duty to in their auditing responsibilities. If my accountant is derelict in accounting my personal taxes, someone's going to pay for the mistake. It's called taking responsibilities for your actions. Why is it no one takes responsibility for their actions? Everyone can make a mistake. I'll be the first to admit I make many. I think we need to look at this matter from a standpoint of treating others how you would like to be treated. I can't understand, as a citizen and a taxpayer of this great state, we can't assume responsibility, use common sense, and rectify this tax issue. I don't know what to say after that, but I have a couple comments. One of the comments I have is, like I stated here earlier, had I was an issue, I would have been here. I'm somewhat concerned that they say that they can't go back and rectify those issues. They break the law for 8 years, and then they stand behind the law and say that, hey, we can't go back and rectify it. I struggle with that. I think a courtroom would take a good look at that. I'm not pointing the finger, I guess I am pointing the finger at the commissioners, and I'm pointing especially at the state auditors. They should have been here auditing this. I trusted you, I trusted them, and here I am. I guess I'm asking for you to consider, let's get this straightened out. I don't want to bring lawyers into it. I'd like to make, I totally appreciate the offer that you came with, okay? I really appreciate the offer. I'm not going to sign for it though. I think more should be done. I think we need to go back over those years. I don't think standing behind a law that says, well, because you didn't come in and contest it, I don't believe that stands. And I definitely am not going to sign a piece of paper. I think that signing that would admit that there was a problem. That's how I feel about it. So with that being said, I appreciate your time. I really would appreciate your consideration this matter, and I think we have possibly an offer to submit. Does anybody else want to?
Do you have some more to say?
No, I think I'm
Not really, but just, we're not here for confrontation with any of the commissioners.
No.
We're just here to, two wrongs don't make a right, and it was wrong it happened, it would be damn wrong if we didn't do something about it. There ain't a banker in the country that doesn't say, get on it. That's the way it is.
You guys aware that Doug and I met with some of the landowners, and we spent, and Chris, our state's attorney, and spent quite a few hours with them discussing all this, and what we come up with is what they basically agreed to and said they represent the vast majority of landowners.
If there's one left, I'd like to have one now.
Here, right.
Did you guys aware that we met with them, those people talking at all?
I talked to Arnie
Yeah.
Sparstead, and he made that comment, and I didn't bring that up, and I should have. I appreciate some of the changes that are being made. I think we made some, I think we have made some good changes. And I appreciate that, I really do. But I still think we need to assume some responsibility in what's been done. And I think we're overlooking the fact that, face it, there's 15 counties that paid for somebody else. I mean, I hate to bring that subject up, but that's part of it.
Well, the
Facts are facts.
facts are facts, and I don't know why the gal that done that got away with it for so long, and I think she had a ring in everybody's nose. They didn't realize what was going on. That's the part that upsets me the most of anything, is that she was a hierarchy, and she thought she knew what she was doing, and she didn't know what she was doing. And that's the responsibility of the commission to know that she knows what she's working for all of us.
Well, when we get the audits back from the state that tell us everything's up and up, it's pretty hard for, we're not assessors here.
No.
Pretty hard for us to know that was wrong.
Well, somebody had to be liable for the mistake she was making, because she wasn't the commissioner.
I think you bring up a great point, and you know what, our group here, I think I'm speaking for the group here, we're sitting here today encouraging you to go after the state.
We've talked about it.
I tell you what, your responsibility, our responsibility, is to straighten them out. They should have done a better job of accounting, come on. If an auditor, like I said earlier, if you did my taxes, somebody's gonna pay that bill. Not that I just want to, I don't mean to, it just needs to be rectified properly. If they get away with it, well, what's the next one? And the next one, where do you stop?
Gene, correct me, does anybody really know why neighborhoods happened when they did in 2011? Can anybody here answer that question? Because my understanding is I have an idea why they took place, but, you know, the reason it was is that when productivity came in, there was $70 difference between rangeland and cropland. Now, you do the math under the production model, the guys that had 200 bushel producing cropland and the guys that had 160 acres of range were paying the same assessment. That's my understanding of what took place, because when productivity came in, it was a poor production startup. It didn't work very well when it first started up. My understanding was, the assessor's office, we had many appeals out of the northern range with grassland or range-related soil. The appeals were pouring in like crazy, saying, why should I pay the same taxes or assessment as the guy that has the crop? So Mary went in and she made the adjustment of 18% higher and lowered them down on that end. The state says that's the only way you're going to start this program, make it right. Did the state not come back and say, you're going to have to make that adjustment to clarify that?
What started this all out, in my idea, is when that quarter lamb brought $13,000 on a grudge sale. And she went nuts over that. And from then on, she was at every auction sale with a pad and everything. And what was she doing at the auction sales? Didn't she have anything else to do? Because it was irrelevant what the land brought, because you couldn't use that anyways, against the law to use it. I think that's where this started. That's what I think.
Well, go ahead, Gene.
Okay, the neighborhoods were established long before that $13,000 land sale. So they were established in 2011. Those sales were probably 2014 maybe. So you know, the establishment was before the land sales. What did bring it into play is what Doug was talking about. Those first few years when this came to play, grassland was at 100% full productivity. Cropland was at about 30% of full productivity. So a .6 rated, which was probably our best grass-rated soils up in the north, were being assessed at $600 an acre. A .6 rated crop-rated soil that was raising corn with a similar, I mean, it wasn't the best crop rating, but it was about average crop rating soils, were also being assessed at about $600 an acre. Prior to that, we had lots and lots and lots of sales neighborhoods, and so when this came into play to begin with, the southern end of the county would have been lowered, gosh, 20-30% on those assessments initially, while the northern end of the county would have been raised 20 or 30% or so that first year they came in. We started that first year without any neighborhoods to begin with, and we looked at that, kind of looked at numbers and went, this just isn't gonna, you know, we're gonna get swamped by appeals in the north end of the county if we raise those 30% and lower those 30%. So we established some neighborhoods that kind of even that out a little bit. Made the change not as drastic from 2009 to 2010. That went through an appeal process. We did lose an appeal from a landowner that had property on both sides of our neighborhood line because we weren't allowed to use sales. In 2011, there was some wording added to the law that did allow you to make location adjustments and did allow you to use market to justify those adjustments. Not necessarily that they were sales adjustments, they were that what does the market indicate that those productivity factors mean or indicate? That's when we added a third neighborhood that was approved by the state. And eventually, as crop and grass rating, the top dollars became more realistic. Probably we should have narrowed or eventually eliminated those neighborhoods. We didn't, and that's kind of where this came into. But that's why it came into play to begin with. That first year we got there's more appeals from the north end than we got from the south end this year when we put that, even though we made that reduction up north, just because, you know, historically we've had that change between north and south based on market, and that's kind of where we got going.
I think the auction sales, though, prior to that, had something to do with it.
Well, the big ones you're talking about were after.
Yeah, I understand that, but there was still higher priced land here and there.
Certainly.
On neighbors fighting and so on and so forth.
Certainly.
Even when this thing started.
Certainly.
That was an erroneous price.
Well,
It was what it brought, but it was either a grudge or a neighbor or...
certainly, but prior
You know
prior
that.
to 2010 was a market-based assessment. You know, so those neighborhoods were legitimate. And there again, we trying to at least appease, maybe not appease is not the right word, tried to eliminate the what appeared to be an imbalance between good pasture land being assessed the same as average cropland in the south when the crop and grass top dollars are too close. Probably should have been reducing that neighborhood to a point where we eliminated it, and our office probably didn't attend to that enough or closely enough. But there again, we were approved by the state every year as we came through.
Did you want to say something, Jim?
You know, yes, I probably should. The problem with originally, before we ever got to production, is that it wasn't working anymore in the state, and probably everyone knows about that. It wasn't just in Brown County where we had trouble coming up with a good sale. But no matter what happened, in 2007 or 8, I can't remember which year, we were tasked as a legislator, we were tasked with coming up with a better plan to figure out the value of agricultural land. The law of South Dakota allows 3 different ways to come up with what is something worth. What you could construct it for, if you bought the nails and hammers and hired somebody to build a building, what would it be worth, is one way to figure that out. One way to figure it out is to see what other houses are selling for and use that for a value. But for businesses, almost straight across the state, they were already using production-based approach. If you were trying to find out, for example, what the coal-fired plant was worth over at Big Stone, and waited around until there was a few sales to figure out what it was worth, you'd never know what it was worth. So they went at looking at how much does that thing produce to come up with a value for that business. What are the expenses? What are the incomes? What does it throw off for profit? Would it pay to maintain it and all this sort of thing? And whether it's a grocery store or whether it's a restaurant, most businesses are taxed based on their income. And so it seemed reasonable to us as legislators to use an income approach for agricultural property as well. The method is pretty complicated, it's true. The state has to figure out how much does corn sell each year, how much does beans sell, how much is raised on a certain acre. But the formula is there, and it actually you plug in the numbers and it pretty much spits out what the answer is. What is the value? That was passed, not unanimously, by the legislature. We studied it for a couple of years during the summer. We visited communities. We figured out what it should be. And even though it wasn't passed unanimously, it became the law of South Dakota. How did we get into trouble then when we started? Because somebody said you can't change from one system to the other in one big step. You need to do it in small steps some way. I suspect that probably got us there. But we all know that the thing that's bad about change is the change itself. If I hated one thing in my life, it'd be going to the dentist, but there is one thing worse. Going to a new dentist you've never visited before. So changing is tough. How did it get so bad in Brown County? I don't know, but it probably isn't the only place that it's bad. But one of the problems is that the law was really never followed. I know that because it isn't going to be followed in our 2018 taxes, because we didn't even discover we had a problem until it was time to have the assessments ready. So we're going to have to wait for next year to see what would happen if we actually implemented the law. I want to go back to something that Mr. Larson said earlier, and that's who is responsible. In the state of South Dakota, the people you elect and send to the legislature are the people that write the laws. And then to see who follows the laws, well, maybe we'll have a disagreement with what the law actually says. That takes the courts. But if we try to figure out who is responsible to see that the law is carried out, turns out it's the governor of South Dakota. The executive officer is the guy that's responsible to see that the laws are carried out. He doesn't do this by himself. He's not an assessor any more than you are. He's the Department of Revenue. If you look, the Department of Revenue is responsible to make sure that the people who do the job are properly trained. Were they? Well, if we're still not doing it right, somebody must have dropped the ball somewhere. I agree with Mr. Larson. We ought to be going after the state to try to figure out how we can rectify this. And I'd be glad to testify about that. And I'm sure that most of the farmers here would like to do this. We're here today, however, because we think we can settle this yet as just fellow residents of Brown County. That this can be settled by us without getting attorneys involved. We should be able to do this. Then you've made an offer. Why isn't that good enough? Well, for one thing, it isn't good enough because, for me, in 2018, my damages were at least 3 times what you offered. You offered $1.32 an acre, and I'm all in over. I paid more taxes than I should have, of about $4 an acre. Granted, some of that goes to schools, but that isn't the school's fault. It's the fault of an assessment process that fell apart somewhere before this. Now, if someone came into your house and stole $1,000, and when it was all done, they said, and I caught them at it, and they said, well, I'll give you back $300, 1/3 of what I took. Will you take that? Is there anyone here that would take that? 1/3 of 1 year's? Because maybe I've been in that house, and maybe that thief has been in the house and stole $1,000 every year for 7 or 8 years. The proposal that I handed out to you says 2 things. Number one, that all of those 15 townships were not all equal, and one settlement figure for every township is not even reasonable. If you go down the list, you'll see, and these are from your own calculations. It says Aberdeen had a county tax overpayment of $21,000. There was 18,000 acres in Aberdeen, and so it was about $1.12 an acre. Should those folks in Aberdeen get $1.32 or $1.12? If we go down to Claremont, it's $1.48 was their cost over tax. Should they get back $1.32 or $1.48? It seems reasonable for us, if there was going to be any settlement, that it ought to be done, at least, probably, it ought to be done clear back to the taxpayer. You probably can't get that close. That's why our thoughts are that it ought to be $1.12 or $1.41 or $1.28, depending on the township settlement, and then it ought to be actually beyond that $1.28. But if all we want to talk about is the county share, because that's what you offered, then we ought to do the county share all the way back for the 8 years. Not just for the one, but we also know that you can't come up with that kind of money. We were surprised as we sat around and talked that you could find $500,000 and say, well, we can settle for $500,000. That's quite a lot of money to come up with. We think it's more reasonable to say that you could give us this back as this $1.12 or $1.42 each year for the next 8 years. You could budget for it. You could come up with a way to make this work without stopping graveling roads and whatever you need to do. So our proposal is pretty simple. You do it at the township level based on how much each township has as damages, and it wasn't just damages for 1 year. If I take my $4 an acre times 4 years, that's $16 that I think I overpaid in the last 4 years. Under this, in Jim Township, I would get back $1.36 for the next 8 years, which would be about $10 instead of $16 that I think I can get back for the 4 years that we're out. The proposal, I think, is reasonable. It says that it's discouraging to get back 1/3 of what you paid in over taxes just this year as a settlement, and that the settlement ought to go back for at least 8 years, since we collected over 8 years in Brown County. Now, someone else may have information to share with you on this. I would I would like you to talk to us about this proposal and what you think about it. I know that we're going to run out of time to carry out our legal remedy if we have to do that. We need to, I will come back to it, we need time to start the legal process. And so we need to have an answer relatively soon. I thought maybe 6 weeks ago, when I began talking with you individually about this, that we'd be a lot closer to a settlement by today than we are. Gene?
Actually, on that settlement, we are on an individual basis, even and not as a township basis. It is a settlement that's coming back on a dollar, on like a reverse levy. So it is going to be, if you have a $500,000 quarter in Claremont Township, you'll get more than a $300,000 quarter in Claremont Township.
Okay, excellent.
So it's not a flat dollar per acre in each township. It is based on the value.
Well, that isn't the way I heard about it, but the way I heard about it was actually in the newspaper.
Yep.
So, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen until we see what the letter is, but we also know we're going to run out of time,
Jim,
and we cannot run out of time.
Real quick,
Yes, sir.
I gotta run the court
Yes.
at 9:30, I have other things I actually do too, so. I wanted to mention one thing. I'm gonna point out the obvious. The problem with talking settlement is you got this, and you got another group that are completely separate. And who do we talk to? We don't, this is what I pointed out weeks and weeks ago at our big meeting, and I said, we're never gonna get this figured out when there's 1,000+ landowners that all believe differently. And that's the struggle. When you say 6 weeks, I'm shocked that they got an offer to you within 6 weeks. Because we don't know who to talk to. We don't know who to come up with these numbers with. We sat down around this table with Department of Revenue on the phone and multiple landowners that assured us that it was the majority of the folks they were representing, or they thought, and we hashed something out. So that's the problem. That's the problem. And I don't expect any answers for you within a week. It's not up to me, it's up to them, but I don't think they're going to give anything back to you in a week. It's going to be too difficult.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. How about an extension?
For what, sir?
For more time to discuss this?
Yeah, well, I think that could benefit everybody.
I think it would.
On the legal end of it.
On the legal end of it.
Do you believe that we can, here in this body, change state law to give us more days?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Neither do I. I think we're going to be obligated.
The timing's tough. I've said that to
Once
the other group
again,
I've
we
talked
stand
to.
behind the law when the law was broke. I mean, you know, that's, you know.
Well, first of all, you don't know what my legal advice has been to the county commission,
Yeah.
because that's an executive session, and I
Yeah.
can't share that, because then I'm breaking an attorney-client privilege. So you don't know what we've talked about.
Okay.
So I'm not going to sit here and say we're standing behind the law. But I'm going to say it again. There's a reason that all the attorneys that all the landowners have talked to don't want to take the case. There's also a reason they're charging what they are. There's also a reason they're telling me what they're telling me during our negotiations. They know whether it's a winnable case or not, and you need to talk to those folks. That's what it comes down to.
What about this 30 day, now filing under protest, what exactly does this mean? Because I know the money was put in a special fund, and then we as individuals have 30 days to do something, is that correct?
Yeah, and I want to be careful because I can't give legal advice to other than the county, the boards. What I would tell you is, my understanding is, you pay under protest, the day you pay, you have 30 days from that time.
And then we have to go to circuit court if we're unhappy with it?
That's
Okay,
correct.
and can we do that as an individual without having to hire a lawyer?
You certainly can try, yes.
We can try.
Here's what I'll tell you. Small claims court is set up for an individual pro se person that doesn't have an attorney. Circuit court there's a reason that people have attorneys in circuit court because things get very difficult. Jim, you know how the law is written. It's taken, the Department of Revenue interpreted it differently. The assessor's office here interpreted it differently. Law is difficult, especially this law. And with all due respect, Jim, I don't think it was written very clear, which isn't a shocker because I think that's most laws. But there's a lot of conflicting statutes. It conflicts partly with the Constitution. It's a mess. It's a damn mess.
The courts are full every day with two people that thought they interpreted the law in a different way.
You're right.
On every law,
You're
not
right.
just this one.
And I'll point one more thing out on that. The circuit court's full every day the way it is. That's why I'm running up the court right now. There's a reason that the legislature made a law that said you pay under protest, you do it within 30 days.
because they flush most of that out at the county level because we can't jam 3,000 suits into circuit court level. And if a judge finds that you can, he's now setting the precedent to allow that to go forward in the future years. That's going to be tough. And that's part of what the attorneys are saying on the other side.
Correct.
Yeah.
Has the letter that you mentioned last week that you were going to be sending to the State Department of Revenue been sent?
Yeah, they have not responded though, we don't.
Okay.
And we don't know if they will respond.
Can we get a copy of that letter?
Sure.
And the second question before you run off.
Thanks, Chris.
Do we, I'm forgetting my question, hold on for just a second while I get my memory bank in order. Do we have a right to get a list of people that filed under protest?
I don't think you have a right to that. I would be a little concerned with the county just turning that over because some of these folks might not want to have the public know that they paid under protest. I don't know. I don't know how many there are. We'd have to talk to those folks. It's a dicey situation. I can't imagine most of them would care if you had a list, but you never know. In my job, I find out people complain about some goofy things, and I don't want to hang the commission up on a confidentiality issue.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I would just say, I guess, we live in a litigious society, and it comes from the fact that we just heard from a lawyer that the only way you can do this is hire lawyers. It's pretty sad to think that we can't settle this out just between us as citizens.
And I think that's what we're trying to do.
That's what we
That's
did.
our game plan.
I said, I spent hours, Doug too, with his other guys, and said they represented the vast majority of you people. And they said they were gonna be satisfied with what we come up with last week, so.
Who said that?
The three landowners, was 3 or 4 landowners.
Neil? Sparksville?
You had the majority of the landowners
Buzz
accepted that?
McNeil, Al Reichman, and Arnie Swarsky.
Yeah, and we had meetings before that, before you guys went in there, and when we came out of the meetings, they never said anything about any numbers they were gonna put forward. If they did that on their individual basis. If they said anything different, that is their issue.
We had that number of 500.
Well, and obviously they can't speak on behalf of every
No,
single
they said-
taxpayer in Brown County.
Yeah.
But speaking for themselves, they thought it was fair.
Yeah.
They were excited that we had gotten things fixed going forward, and I wasn't at this particular meeting, but just talking with them one-on-one, they were glad that we were trying to address things
Yeah.
as well as we can.
And that night, we had the same meeting again, and we talked to Buzz, and he also said that he told whoever was at that meeting that he would not be, happy with just the county's portion. He said that to us, and he said
Who said that?
Buzz did.
But he said he'd agree to it, go along with it.
Was this at a commission meeting, or was this
No,
some
we
type of
just
special-
Doug and I
There was
met
no
with
quorum,
the
it was just a committee.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have a quorum, just Doug and I were there.
They had asked us if they could talk to us as a couple commissioners, which anybody has that right to do that. And we're willing to listen. We get back to something that Gene said earlier, and naturally, when production came in, I wasn't on the commission, and I believe, you gave us numbers, Jim, and I appreciate the work that was put into it, because I've also run a lot of numbers, but something I haven't done yet, and I'd be curious, and I will be working on this in the next couple of weeks. I want to go back to like 2011. There wasn't a lot of difference at the time, because, look at the dollar amounts of what land was in 2011 when this thing took off. As this thing grew, much like Gene and I discussed, maybe in about 15 is when this thing should have shifted, and the 1.18s should have went down to 105, and they should have went to 95. Maybe in 16, everybody should have been on 1. And that's kind of just what I look at the numbers, and I see how this thing formulated. I will tell you that, production model is working now, but it wasn't worth a crap in 2011. It was the poorest model you could ever put together when you look at rangeland and cropland. But, we had to start somewhere, like you said, Jim. I give you credit for that. You had to start somewhere, and it wasn't a very good production when it came in. But as it went down the road, about 14 it started shifting, 15 it got there, and maybe 15 should have been 17. Well, now we're not at full production anymore, because now all the ruckus we've had. But it wasn't until 17 we finally hit top dollar on ag land. Look at how many years it took us to get there.
Yeah, I will admit that could and would have been a problem. The only other way to do it would have been to put it in bang, and I don't know that that would have worked. I can tell you to start with, you know, I believe you were there with us at the time we did this. We built into it to do it by 10%. We maybe should have said 50. Turns out the 10 wasn't fast enough. But I will still say this, with all due respect to that problem, we still are not using the production the way the law says. We're still not doing that. We struggle through this. I'm taking my assessment problem from next year all the way to the state, because I'm going to talk about it with them. They need to be doing the job to make sure that this production method is working everywhere.
Well, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe 18, we lowered the 1.18 down to 87, just to try to work through this thing to give everybody a break. Now, we could have bowed in and said, okay, this mess in 17, everybody goes to 1. That would have been the correct way under production, Jim. I agree with you 100%, that we'd have just said, okay, you're at 80, you're at 1.18, the middle tier is at 95, screw this, 2018, everybody's going to be at 1. So what we did is try to work through this as a commission and say, okay, they feel they were over-assessed. The time to appeal was over with. So what do? We have to back the 1.18 or whatever down to, you were originally set at 1, is what we were going to do for 1.18 for 18. We were originally going to go to 1. Well, then you had the appeal process past us. So we decided to, rather than go through and have everybody appeal, we took the 1 and put it down to 87 is what had happened. Because we had missed the appeal process. It would have been a nightmare to try to get caught in the middle of that appeal process. That's why we had you as townships offer an appeal as a local, as a whole, to bring down to 87. You didn't have to do that. We didn't have to go down to 87. We could have stayed at the 1. But we tried to make it fair with where the 87s were, and that's kind of how that all mess took place. I mean, it wasn't something we just dreamed up, and I agree, it is not what production says. But hopefully, we can get to that the next year, 19 payable 20, everybody will be at 1.
Correct, and thank you for that, because that was true and that's what you did. That's not what I've been talking about, however. The process, the adjustments that needed to be made is because we chose to call range-rated soils not cropland, because they can't be, never could be. But it doesn't say in the law that the only non-cropland is range-rated. It says that the land needs to be divided into cropland and non-cropland. Now, it's easy when you come to range-rated soils, you know where they go. But all the rest of the soils could be either way. Fields that were completely covered with rocks were called cropland. No wonder it was out of whack in 2010, because it was done incorrectly in 2010. And therefore, adjustments needed to be made. But the adjustment wasn't the adjustments that were chosen. I was at every one of those meetings as we traveled across the state and talked to farmers. I was at every one of them. And we tried our best to do whatever. If anyone knew what we were trying to do better than Mary Worley, I don't know who it would have been. She was the chairman of the Directors of Equalization. They have a group. And she was their leader during that time when this went on. She was at every meeting, every word we said, every testimony we took. She heard it. And she was being paid by us as taxpayers in Brown County because she was choosing those trips, and they were being paid for by us. No one could have known more about how this should have been done than Mary. She was an assessor, so while we were maybe talking about something that some of us on the committee didn't really understand wholly, she did. For her to come out of it and not know the difference between cropland and non-cropland is beyond my imagination. It's like, wow, how could she have not understood what we were trying to do? It is, as the attorney pointed out, it is hard to write down the words specifically, so they say what you want. You can say words, and they're taken in by someone else to mean something different. It is very difficult. Every day I served in Pierre, that I had an attorney in my committee, I was happy, because he was the wordsmith. He knew why the comma needed to be there, because it changed the meaning. Not all of us understand that. But certainly she knew. In fact, in the last meeting that we had where we voted on this in Pierre, then it went to the floor of the Senate and we voted it in the floor of the Senate. In the Senate Tax Committee, the last time anybody could testify on production, nearly the last comment made by anyone was made by Mary Worley. And I can't tell you exactly, quote, exactly what she said, but it went something like this. This will never work, you will see. And then we voted, we passed it, it went to the floor, and it passed on the floor. And it turns out she was right. It has not worked. Just exactly like she predicted it wouldn't work. Not because the law isn't any good, but because it was never followed. I am done, thank you.
You know, that's, when this all took place, we all know that this wasn't going to get fixed in 60 days. It took 7-8 years to have this happen. And I mean, I feel for anybody that's paying on a protest and you have 30 days to react, well, you're asking the commission with the Department of Revenue and other factors involved to take care of this in 30, 60 days. I don't think it can be done, to be honest with you. It's going to take a long time to work through this process, and we have to be careful in Brown County because we are going to set the precedence for this state. There's other counties out there that are having the same problem as we have. Nobody wants to talk about them. I'd love to know how they're handling this right now.
That's a good point.
You know, we just can't jump into this thing and say, well, this is what Brown County's going to do, because there may be 10 other counties that are going to go on this same trail.
And that number per acre abatement every year is going to be different. I mean,
They will.
this is probably the highest one. You go back to 12, it's probably not going to be hardly anything at all. So that's,
It may not be. It may not be, but as we go off into the future, we expect it to be higher as well, yes?
But it's fixed in the future.
no, it should be.
We're done.
You shouldn't be overcharged at all.
No. Yeah, okay. I misunderstood. Yes, hopefully, the error of neighborhoods will go away, but certainly that number, the tax dollars we spend will go up as we go into the future. There's no doubt about that either.
But not unfairly, because that's been...
No, it will not go up unfairly.
And that was kind of why you guys focused on the last year, because that was the biggest discrepancy.
No, that was the only one I have.
Okay. No, I'm talking, these guys, when they met with the other
Yeah,
landowners,
we got the numbers
that's why it
from
was
the
such a
state.
big deal to
Gene-
them to focus
Gene did the
on
numbers,
last
the
year.
state did the numbers, and they come up exactly...
And that's
the
where
same.
I got them. I did not, those are not made up, those are the same state numbers, and Gene's numbers and the state numbers match.
That was the first year we were at full productivity under the model.
Yes, I get that. Still, it's the only numbers that I had.
Exactly.
And it wasn't whatever was in the newspaper, and I did not know that we were gonna go out and try to fix every landowner separately. I believe that should be done. So you can leave this off and just follow that way. Our bigger thing was, you cannot pay back $1.5 million this year in over taxes in the Aberdeen School District, because you don't have that kind of money. So our proposal is to do this over time. And if it took us 8 years to get here, we should be able to step out of it in 8 years. Now, maybe 8 is too long. You want to make it 4 years? Then I would like to see a counteroffer.
Well, the other factor that'll come in there, Jim, is, okay, say we go back to 2014, and you put the 1.18s to 1, for granted, and you take the 85s and you put them to 1. I will tell you that the 1.18s are going to generate a hell of a lot more income than those townships up there because of the rangeland. Because remember, you got valued land at $3,000 an acre, and you got valued land at $1,200 an acre coming into this formula. Understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
you got a lot
I do.
more rangeland than you got more crop ground, so you're at 1.18, and you're at that factor up there.
Do you know how we got to 1.18? I do.
Well, then
We
you say-
started, we gave some guys 13% discount, we gave somebody else 3% discount, and then we weren't collecting enough money.
Right. so
And
then-
Mary was smart enough, she didn't want to get caught by peer, so
Right.
she said, well, how much will we have to charge these guys in these 15 townships? 118% will work.
But in the same token, the Department of Revenue looks at what our revenue is gonna be for Brown County, and now we're gonna bring in another factor. Is your taxing factor of your assessment .85, or is it gonna be .95? That's gonna change this whole program when you go back every year. You know, you may not get a .85 factor if you go through and look at what 14 was. Maybe you'd have been paying .95, not only on your ag land, but maybe on your shops and your bin sites. So we gotta bring that formula in there, because that's part of the program. I mean, all this stuff comes into play. It's not just the ag land assessment. You know as well as I do, Jim, this is very complicated when you start looking at all of the things that can change this assessment factor, the taxation factor. It's not just 1 year you look at, I mean, it's all this stuff put together.
Still, as I said earlier, if somebody took $3,000 from you, or $1,000 from you, and you caught them, and they said, I'll give you 300,
I
you
wouldn't be
wouldn't
happy,
accept
I wouldn't be
that.
happy with it, no, I
Neither
wouldn't.
am I. Thank you.
If all those things are a factor, shouldn't your guys' spending be a factor? Because if you can cut $500,000 like that, isn't that kind of an obvious solution?
Well, $500,000 just like that, the county, it's gonna put us in a bind, but we can probably cut budgets and go here and there. You know, our county runs on a $30 million budget. We got 2 departments that eat eat half that up.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have like we got $1 million just sitting in the bank to be blowing. I mean, we barely get by with what we have. I mean, I don't think we as a county misspend taxpayers' dollars just since I've been on the board, looking at what happens. I think we're pretty cautious. We always try to look at saving. We're looking at health insurance right now. We think we found a way that maybe we can save the county $70,000 by changing our health plan. I mean, we just don't look this stuff and blow it off. We're trying always to try to save ourselves money. But I'm gonna go back. This assessment thing's a complicated animal. I mean, it's gonna be tough to deal with and try to straighten out. I mean,
Our solution is fairly reasonable too, because we understand if you build a next 8 years into the budget to pay us back, that we're going to be taxed to pay ourselves back. We get that. But the guys who enjoyed the benefits of not being overtaxed are going to share in that, and we still think, as opposed to a one-time payment, that it ought to be over time. And we do understand that we're going to pay ourselves back. That's pretty. But once we hire the attorneys, we're going to be paying attorneys to defend us and to defend you. That seems like that's going to be expensive as well. So if we help pay ourselves back with sharing it with everybody, seems more fair to us than a one-time payment of a third of what we were owed. I think we have been pretty fair here, because we haven't gone after schools, we haven't asked about that, and we've put it out over the next 8 years to allow you to be able to manage through this and still fix our roads and keep the bad guys locked up and keep the lights on.
so then, the next question is, and it's much like when the 3 parties met with Tom and I, and the question came up, and just between the 3 of them, it sounded like 2 were all right with the county parts, and one of them says, well, I don't know if I could give the school part up. And I says, well, we have 3 people here, and we can't get an agreement with 3. Can you imagine if we throw the other realm in there? So now, my understanding that the particular in the townships, are you asking for the county portion, or you want all the money back? Because, this is a huge deal.
This is county portion, as you know, because you were the guys that calculated it.
Right.
So we're not asking for the school portion back in the first place. And we know that we're going to be paying part of this back ourselves. We know that as well. We just think that getting paid back a third of what we overpaid just this year isn't enough. No, and I know people are going to settle. You know what? If you send out that letter, people will sign. I want to tell you a quick story from the beginning of my farming practices. I took over the family farm when my dad stepped back and said, you know what, I'm going to let you make some mistakes here, because I know that you learn better by mistakes. So it comes time to sell calves, and I don't have a very big farm, and we had 100 calves, and I was watching that market at the sale barn, and I said, oh my God, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. I'd hate to go with my 100 calves on that down week. That'd be a bad deal. So I decided on my own that I'm going to just sell a few each week. So I backed my trailer up next to the water trough, and then the calves come in. I said, come on, calves, and brrr, here they come running. I opened up the door, brrr, and went a bunch, and I sold them. Second week, I sold some more. Third week, I sold some more. Fourth week, I sold some more. Fifth week, none of them would come, because what was left was the wild ones. Right? So a few people are going to settle early, and a few people are going to settle, and then there's going to be those of us that are too wild to settle. So I'd be a little cautious about this, because I learned that bitter lesson about trying to pick out replacement heifers from the wildest animals on my farm. Didn't work very well. I would like you to know that we're here today without attorneys, in spite of what our attorney says we should do, because we think we can settle this as reasonable people and would like to do that. And we think that we don't have to take all the money out of South Dakota or out of Brown County, because we think we should go after the people who are actually responsible. Just like if I had an accountant in my business who was siphoning off some money into his, I'm going to make him his because I don't want to get politically wrong. The secretary in my business is taking the money himself, and all at once I'm getting guys that aren't getting paid because he's cashing the checks that belong to them. In the end, I'm the guy that gets responsible for that. But I go for recovery to the guy who actually caused the problem. And you are going to have to go after whoever caused this problem, because I don't believe it was yours either. I know all of you weren't here, even though some of you have talked with me about your previous assessor more than 2 or 3 years ago. So it wasn't like it should have been a surprise to you that this person who just hated this new system, it shouldn't have been a surprise to me either. The reason I'm with these folks today, because I've got land that's been undertaxed and land that's been overtaxed. But I feel responsibility to my fellows in Brown County, because I think we passed a good law, and I just assumed that it was being followed without ever checking it up, without ever coming in and appealing my taxes, without ever going to my local equalization board and asking for anything. I just assumed that it was done correctly, probably much like you did. And so I think the state has a big responsibility here, as well as the person who actually made the problems in an office just kitty corner here. I really have to shut up, so I'm going to have to leave the room, because that's the only way I know how to do
I appreciate your honesty.
Can I say one thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Is that you guys are way better off visiting with farmers like us than you are the biggest, meanest, baddest lawyers you can find. Because once we get into this thing, if we have to cross that line, which we are going to cross the line no matter what, unless there's something we see definitive here shortly. And I know you talk about state government, county government doesn't move that fast. It's designed to weed people out of the court system simply because they don't want to go to court. But you all will be sitting in a deposition with the biggest, baddest, meanest lawyers we can find. And you're not going to spend a little money. You're going to spend a ton of money, because you start dangling $14, $12, $13 million in front of lawyers, it's catnip to them. It's just catnip. And they're going to go, this is an easily winnable case. They've already admitted they're wrong. So another thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see the Aberdeen American News dedicate time and a column to show us how to figure out taxes. I've got more people that have talked to me, and they got degrees from the University of South Dakota in accounting saying, you can't figure this out. It's almost impossible. It's designed that way. So you just give up. Some clarity would be nice. One more thing.
Go ahead.
I see Jan Wiseman got $4,000 in abatement.
why is she different than me? I got taken to the cleaners by you guys, and I should be entitled to some of that money back.
I guess the one thing with Wisemantle, the property that was abated back, she no longer owned. It was the 281 bypass, when the bypass went through. It went through their property, and that it got overlooked. So that she no longer owned that property for those years. So that's why that abatement took place, is she was no longer the landowner of that property.
Well, it's a case of seeing the Aberdeen American News and not knowing the whole story.
Well,
I mean, that's kind of what it is. But when we see it, was like, oh, fireworks are going off. How come she gets this and we get passed by?
Yeah.
You know, and then you get offered, you know, this little crumb or a crumb, and we kind of like, oh, we're not going to.
Yeah. But I understand your frustration. You know, in the taxation, I didn't actually really know how to figure this out until we had this mess came up, and I understand it very well now. I spent many hours with Gene going through this, and you know, the American News also printed that the damages for, it said 9 years, well, we only been in production for 8, and 10 we didn't have so we're talking basically 7 years. As it was $15 million, it's not anywhere close to that dollar amount. You know, that's the other thing is people read $15 million. I can tell you just by the numbers I've done, and I will tell you that I will be going back 14, 13, 12, and 11 and going through some of those numbers, and it's not anywhere close to $15 million.
Well, I think
That makes me feel better. Really, it does. That's good. I appreciate you digging, I really, really do.
You know.
Appreciate your time and
But anyway,
all your efforts.
whatever the outcome may be, you folks know we respect you and we always will.
Yeah,
You know.
this is just,
No hard feelings, please.
I don't want no hard feelings.
It's a tough situation for everybody, that's all there is to it.
But I think it's our responsibility to come and share our thoughts with you.
Well,
Because I have not done it, I need to do it, and we need to do more of it, so.
It's not like we're ignoring you, it's just, we're having an awful hard time motivating through this whole process when you have these entities, and that, it's not like we're stalling. I mean, if we could fix it tomorrow, I think any one of us would jump up and want to do it. But like I said, it's just not that easy just to go out and make these numbers work and make the county work, and what the state Department of Revenue, what the other attorneys in the state are looking at for the other counties that were truly assessed over one. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on this commission right now on how we do this.
Well, the stall wouldn't bother if it wasn't for the time.
Well, that's what
the
I
problem.
said.
Everybody says, well, they're just stalling, waiting for time. Well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, I don't know, but you understand what we see.
I agree with you 100%.
In order to pay the taxes, we almost got to put a crop in. I mean, can't be in here looking around. If it hadn't rained, you wouldn't see him. But
Well, the way it'll end up a certain amount of the entire crowd it'll be whoever wants to go along, that's all there is to it. Go along
Well,
with
we
the ride.
would hope it don't go down that avenue either. I mean, I'm not a fan of having 65 different attorneys funneling through here and different lawsuits.
I don't blame you.
You're saying the same thing, but I'm as one commissioner, we have 4 other commissioners, I don't think they'd want to see it either, but how do we get out of this political correct? I mean, I don't know.
I think
I
you
don't have
gotta
the answer.
go after the state.
Well, I think that's going to depend on how they respond to our letter that we sent, and I mean, if they just blow us off like they seem to have done in the last 2 months, I think we've kind of got our answer.
Well, and I hope you guys know that by looking around this table, you know, you could go the completely legal way and the best way for the county, or you can do what's right. And it was said at this table last week, technically we don't have to do anything for those people that didn't pay in protest. Well, we made the notion, or we talked about, we want to treat everybody the same, because it's not fair if you just didn't know, hey, I could have paid in protest and then had my 30 days. So I hope you guys recognize that right here, the 5 of us, we're trying to do what's right by people.
The thing is, everybody trusted the commissioners, they were elected, everybody trusted them, and so what is there to protest? You believe that it's the way it's supposed to be. You think it's done within the law, so you don't go protest, even though you think it's high.
As did we.
We found out about this at the same
Same
time
time you
everybody
did.
else did, when we read it in the American News. And for the last 7 years, we have been submitting our plan the 1st of December. The law requires us to submit our assessment plan for the upcoming year. We've done that. The Department of Revenue has signed off on it. So we had no way of knowing that, in their opinion, we were doing something wrong. We still don't think we were doing anything wrong, because we did what the law required, we submitted our plan, they signed off on it, they were well aware of the neighborhoods and what we were assessing. So if you're not told you're doing something wrong, all we can do is trust the Department of Revenue.
And why would they change it? If you're doing it right this year, why would you change it?
Right.
But now that we know,
We have
we
to
can
go to
move
the-
forward and do differently.
Truly, that's why we're here.
Yep.
We're encouraging you to take the next step.
Yeah.
I think the state needs to be liable. My goodness, you let this slide by, well, what's the next one gonna bring? And the next one?
Well, Chairman Feldheim read the letter that we wrote to the Department of Revenue last Tuesday. I met with Marty Jackley yesterday.
Good.
He was CC'd along with the governor, and as of yesterday, he had not seen the letter yet. So I don't know where it's at. It could be on his desk.
Can we help you as producers somehow?
Well, at this point, we're just waiting for a response.
Okay.
So
Well, we're in a stall.
Once it reaches the Attorney General's, the Governor's, and the Department of Revenue's desk, it's read, they're not gonna just act on it that day, they're gonna get legal counsel. So unfortunately, as soon as we get a response, we'll know what direction we will be forced to take.
I'd like to ask a question about communication. As you know, I was the only landowner that showed up at the meeting last week. I was the only one that knew about it. And is there a way to get the word out, you know, that if you're going to be making a proposal or a decision of some sort?
It's on the agenda.
That was on the
Well-
agenda, and it was the American News and the radio were here.
I mean, the guys we met with knew what we were doing.
Why was I the only one that showed up?
I was
It
wondering the
wasn't
same
because other
thing.
people weren't interested and would have wanted to be here.
I thought those
They
three
didn't
guys
know.
would have been here. I really
They
wanted
didn't
them
know.
to.
Yeah, and the other thing about the filing under protest and the 30 days, until I just asked this question this morning, I wasn't aware when that 30 days started from. Nobody told me that when I filed under protest at the window over there. You know, there needs to be some outward communication about you're doing this. You can't assume that we dumb people know what the process is. We have to be told. And nobody said anything. They just accepted my money and said it's being put into a special fund. And I heard this thing about 30 days, I don't know at the window or from somebody else, but I did not know until maybe within the last week that I had to take legal action if I was unhappy with it.
And
So-
to be fair, they told us we're not allowed to tell you, sir. Our instructions were we just accept the payment, that's the legal instruction we gave. I apologize, it makes me feel bad when I am not allowed to answer people's questions, but those were my orders. You don't get in the middle of it, you take the payment, and I couldn't tell people.
Okay, well, I'm not...
Do you guys have a copy of what the law actually is from the state?
The law on...
Is there a law or
Okay,
is
under
there?
protest?
On what?
Under
On the
protest?
protest, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is in
we've
state
got a
law.
copy. You have a
But
copy
you
of
can't
that,
expect the
yeah.
average...
Not necessarily having protest, but
But
I
you can't expect seven
understand.
seven employees to interpret it for you either. I
I'm
mean,
not
it gets
asking for
complicated. I
You know,
think
they-
what they've been
they
telling
can do
people
both.
is refer to this law. That's the only thing they can tell. They can't tell people,
I didn't hear that.
you gotta do this, you gotta do
I
that.
didn't hear that, and I would not have known the starting date of that either, whether it
Okay.
was the date I paid. I paid 2 weeks before the deadline.
Sure.
So I've only got another week to, be rounding up what I'm gonna do on this now.
So,
But,
well, and that's why Sheila's folks were instructed that, because the state attorney's office doesn't want them interpreting the law and explaining to each person. You got 7 different gals up there telling people 7 different things, that's dangerous. So that's why he has said, just tell people, this is the state law.
Even a slip of paper or a handout, Rachel, would have been helpful.
Sure.
Just
But
to
you
say,
don't have a
you know,
guideline to go by of what the law really is? You do have?
We're following the law. That's what we're
All the
doing.
different ones in codified law that apply to taxation. I
Right.
mean, there's chapters and chapters of it, of the different statutes that apply in different situations.
Nothing simple.
Well, the sad part is that most of us have
So you left.
I should have left. The sad truth is that we continue to try to do this as neighbors, rather than getting the courts involved, but it's pretty obvious to me that attorneys have written the laws to benefit themselves because they'll tell you, don't talk to me, right? And mine will say, don't talk to you, and then what? We should go get her. You may not have noticed it, but last night, the Oregon story was back on public, you know, where the irate farmers who thought they had too much wildlife territory and they needed more for their wildlife, took over the wildlife park. I mean, really. It gets to be a misunderstanding and it gets out of hand and then somebody dies. It's a mess, and our whole government does that. I mean, when you say drain the swamp, half the people in the world in the United States know exactly that they're right.
This might be a dumb question. Do you have liability insurance as a commission or not?
We do, I believe, but I understand under our state's attorney that it does not cover taxation.
Right.
That's just what I believe Chris has told us.
Let me ask another question. I know if I haven't been damaged, I can't go to court. I mean, that's the first question. If I haven't been damaged, then stay home. If you haven't been damaged, can you go after the state? In other words, do we have to go after you legally in order for you to be able to go after the state legally? I would love to know the answer to that question.
And that's one of the answers we're waiting for, Jim. The letter that we sent last week, once we get a response, that will determine our next course of action. We can't tell you what that'll be because we don't know what, if anything, they're going to be willing to do.
We can get.
Well, my point is, maybe we have to fail to pay, and you have to go into default before you've been damaged enough so that you can go after the state. I do not know the answer to this. I'm glad I'm not an attorney, but something is wrong when we can't go at this some reasonable way.
I don't think we want to take Brown County into default just to prove a point.
I don't know, but you may not have any standing in court if you haven't been damaged.
When you're also supporting the biggest industry in the state, agriculture.
We understand that, but going into default affects
You're not really in
every...
default, though, because you have the money, it's just you can't use
Well, I'm
it.
just using Mr. Hunt's...
Well, that's true.
Well, I'm asking a legal thing, and I would like you to ask your attorney, maybe in private, maybe you wouldn't have any standing unless you've been damaged, because I know I don't. I can't go to court and say I want to sue over this, especially if I wasn't damaged. I'd be Attorney General. So
So in other words, you're saying we have to lose first before we
no, I
can say that?
I do not know the answer to that. I am asking you to find that out, because maybe there is no way you can do anything without being damaged.
We're already damaged by agreeing to pay this money back.
Well, I think it's worth knowing the answer to this question, because...
And we are you. We're using your money to pay this bill, so it's not us, it's not our money. We're using taxpayer money to provide this refund.
Well, I do know
That's pretty obvious.
there's no other way for you to get it, right? Even
Exactly.
if you went to the bank and borrowed it...
The only source of money we have, right.
I hear you.
So will you consider our counter...
You do have a lot of our money, though.
Pardon me, Carson?
Will you consider our counter...
That one, because we don't have much left.
Uh-huh.
We don't have much money, you know.
No, I know
I
you
guess
don't,
so
but
committed.
You got quite a few monies you
Just
shouldn't have.
without holding you legally responsible, the question he asked seems legitimate to me. If you just looked at our proposal of paying back not just a one-time partial payment, but paying us back over time, is that something you would consider at least, so that we could go home and say, wow, it's going to be tough to hire an attorney because we think these guys are going to take care of us, or should we just go home and hire... I mean, if I listen to your legal guy, the answer was we need to get an attorney. That's what he told us.
So your number you're asking for a settlement, you have this sheet here.
Yeah, no,
Well, how do we-
no, that sheet was to show you
Okay,
that where I
how
got
do
a
we-
third, where I got a third.
So your number, and I don't know that this would be as easy to ask, but you're asking for the county portion back for the last 8 years, well, 7 years actually, because 10 there wasn't any 118%. Everybody was at a 1 factor, and 18's been taken care of because everybody's on the same page. So would you agree we're talking 11 to 17?
So, let's say 4 years
Okay.
then, yeah.
You know,
I
I
was
guess-
just wondering if we could talk about this.
Well, and it's hard for us to accept it because we don't know what the dollar amount is until somebody brings it to us. I mean, how do I agree to,
You can't use it per acre, you're gonna have to use it per assessment.
and I would tell you that the easiest
have
way
to
to do
use
that
it
is
per
when you
share.
take your 1.18 and you take the one factor, you came out with like $52.50 or $53 per 100,000 value. The reason it was done that way is somebody may have a quarter of crop that's 500,000 and somebody have a quarter of crop that's half crop and half rangeland that's worth 200,000. When you do it per 100,000, it makes it easier to figure the math on that quarter, that particular area.
Yes,
When
and
you start
Gene
going
said-
by acre, it gets pretty complicated because your 160 acres, I don't know if anybody's got actually 160 acres of corn in on a quarter. It's usually 155, 158, or 148. I mean, how do you, that's why it's done per value, is why we put it out that way.
And that's good, and so as far as that chart by townships, doesn't really make any difference. Gene already said you're gonna do it by the individual farm, and I think that's appropriate. I guess what I was asking is paying us back, not just one payment,
I know what
but
you're saying.
more years back. Is that something that you think we can deal with rather than looking at this? I think it wouldn't take much assurance from you guys, not a legal opinion, but assurance that you would work on that would allow us to go home and say, I think they're working on our behalf. Once again, I can't hold you to it, obviously, because I want you to vote on that here without talking to your attorney. But is it something that you would consider doing, which was the question that I believe you asked?
Correct.
I guess, my standpoint right now is I would probably want to look at the numbers for 12, 13, 14, 15, because they keep growing every year it goes
Yep,
up.
right.
Yep.
And I think for us as a commission to make a responsible decision, we have to know if that number is 2.3 or is it 5.5 million. I mean,
Correct.
we have to be careful what position we put ourselves in, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to looking at that, but I'm one vote. There's 4 other commissioners here.
I know.
And, that we have to respect that.
Just asking you to consider it.
I would consider at this point, and I don't know,
It's an option we need to look at. And
I
have
think
to
you-
think taxpayers in mind, and you're the taxpayer.
Oh,
Both ways,
sure.
paying and the receiving.
And you understand that we know in doing this that we're gonna pay ourselves back in our future taxes.
Yeah.
We understand this, so we're not gonna get pulled with this, but
The thing we have to be careful of here is, and I'm gonna go down this road again, is we as a commission say, okay, the number is 2.3 million, and we'd agree to pay you back over 8 years, and all of a sudden we decide to go to the state says, so you voluntarily did that, well, you have no claim against us. So you see where we have to be careful how we act on this, because
Well-
if we make a decision to voluntarily do this, we've thrown our chance to go after the state of revenue department, so timing is awkward here, to say the least.
We have or not, really, but something we can sure look at it and find, get the numbers, that's what I'd like to see.
The important thing to remember, and Jim, you brought this up, when we first started productivity, we were at about 30% of what was true and full value. That's why we had to go from annual increases of 10 to 25%.
Yes,
We
sir.
knew we'd never catch up. So if you go back to 11, I'll use 11 as an example, we were 70% behind. We were only assessing at 30% of what should be true under productivity.
and
So,
then therefore our mill levies were higher. So,
exactly.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
it'll be a little bit difficult to figure out, okay, you're assessing 30% of what is true, so if you were assessing at 100%, the difference of that 70%, what happens if you would have ended up paying more? When you do the math on this whole thing, if we're assessing at only 30% of what you should be at under productivity, you're 70% behind. So, I'm just thinking out loud here. You might want to be careful what you wish for, because what if that 70% would bring you up to actually owing money? Do you see what I'm saying? Because we were under-assessing.
Maybe I don't understand, because, our mill levies would change if our assessments were different.
Absolutely.
So the taxes we paid would still have been, we would have paid taxes even if the mill
But
levy...
not to the extent that you did in 17. That's the year we have numbers
Exactly.
for.
I'm not
It
against
could be
you
a-
going back and looking
Right.
at the numbers
We need to
from
look at
2017, 2016, 2015. I wouldn't feel
Right.
as bad if we went back 4 years
Right.
instead of 8. I think we made a proposal here that wasn't quite as big a slap on the face as the one that I read in the newspaper. And I think that these folks, you know, and I can't speak for everyone, but ultimately is going to happen exactly what you started out. We're going to have to say, I accept this and sign off on it. And if I was your advisor and if I was an attorney, I would say that you must do. So I understand you wanting to do this. And I think that some people will take your current funds, but I'm guessing that those of us that are here won't, because we don't think it's quite enough. And maybe 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. We said 8 because there's no use to negotiate at the minimum we're willing to take because there's no negotiations left, right?
I think you could go to 4.
I appreciate what you're saying, going back and checking. We might find out it isn't that big a deal. But
And that's
wouldn't
my
you
point.
feel better?
Yeah.
That's my...
I know, I
point.
feel a lot better.
We need to do that.
And my point is, that'll take a little bit of time
That's
to
fine.
figure those 6
But-
years out, because we're talking 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, because we've already taken care of 17.
Yeah.
We know where we're at. So we're talking 6 years of calculations. Revenue's gonna have to do it, we're gonna have to do it on our end, but there's some variables in there that everybody needs to keep in mind.
Correct.
We were so far behind early on, that when you catch up, which we did in 17, these are the true numbers. This is first year of full productivity.
See what it shows.
Good.
I will.
Thank you.
I think we've accomplished the fact that the commission is more than willing to look at the numbers
Oh,
and
yeah,
try to get those together for you. Naturally, much like you, Carson, it has the protest thing. We can't speed the process up any faster than what's going to happen. I mean, and I guess if you feel it's necessary to bring action against the county under protest, you know, it's not that we're stalling, don't get me wrong. It's just, we can't make the time move any faster with all the outside elements controlling us. I mean, I think we'll take a step in the right direction and get some numbers from 11 all the way up to 7. We don't need 17, 16, we'll get the numbers.
Okay.
We'll look at them, and I think you're going to be surprised what 11, 12, and 13 is. It's because the numbers were quite small back then. It's not a large dollar. Like I said, it didn't start happening until about year 15 is when maybe the spread should have happened.
Did I hear you right that 17's been taken care of? If we sign that letter that's being sent out?
Well, we've addressed 17, we know what the numbers are for 17. That's the only year that we've gone back and done the calculations on, and that's what we used to make our offer. That's my point. We know where we're at for 17, because it was full productivity.
Because I, in my mind, if I sign it, then I'm signing away any kind of, it's over with, you know. I'm not over with it.
Right, so I understand.
So you're signing saying you're happy with 17 is what the
No.
language we're talking about.
I think the terminology is also preceding
Yeah.
years.
That you would
Yeah,
like.
my understanding.
That's the way I
So
understand what it
we have
is.
agreed. we're
And I haven't
doing
seen that
fair
document yet.
between-
I don't even know.
haven't seen it either.
I don't think
Doug, I
he's-
inquired if we could get a copy of that letter that was sent to the state. Has somebody rounded that up?
We can get copies of that,
Okay.
absolutely.
So anyway,
I'll get it before you leave.
let's, where we're at is we will work on this. I don't know, Gene, do you have any idea when we can get numbers so we can try to let everybody know when we could meet again?
Well, I'll visit with my spreadsheet folks.
Right over there.
Where's the spreadsheet folks over here?
Yeah.
No wonder you don't have any hair.
I made sure you made the note.
No, we're not angry with you guys individually or anything.
Well,
We like you.
Feel tomorrow.
Right.
We're the only way of showing it. Did you have it done by next Tuesday, and even if the state didn't verify, because your numbers were spot on with the state last time you did it.
Sure, they didn't like it.
Well, we can do exactly the same
Individually,
spreadsheet, just
wake
pull
up
out
every
the
morning and
township.
worry if it's the
Sure, you
same, as
just
long
do
as
the
you know,
same.
you know, you didn't know that.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank
I think we're ready.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Ray.
Anyway,
Appreciate it.
we will try to have numbers together next Tuesday.
Okay, get in the field pretty soon.
Bob, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Hope you can get in the field soon here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
We were kind of...
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Can I get a copy of that letter?
Yeah, Max is gonna give you a copy.
How about taking a 2-minute break then, huh?
Yeah, 2-minute break.
Okay, we will be on a 2-minute break.
You can leave that door open.
Okay, we're back out of recess.
Not that we were ever out.
Well, I may have to come edit that for you, Shannon. Mr. Dirk, you had a chance to look over our bid from County Road 23 project?
Yep, yeah, I would recommend that we move forward with it and award it to Mid-State. I ran some quick numbers, it's about 1.1 million, the alternative that we would have done as opposed to the 750,000 here, so it seems to have the desired result on the front end so far.
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Hanson, second by Kippley to approve the bid on County Road 13 to Mid-State.
23.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
23.
carries.
Okay, that's all I had.
Thank you, Dirk.
I'll wait around here for a little while.
We're assuming it's gonna go smoother from here on out, okay? Max, do you have, your stuff that you wanna take care of now?
Yeah, I want, this is
Yep.
I got a bunch of walks downstairs and figure out all. Sometimes if you can come up with them, I'll go through them and see
Yep.
which ones we should keep.
Okay.
Okay. All right, sorry about that.
Okay.
Minutes from April 30th joint and May 1st general.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Sutton, second by Hanson to approve, joint city minutes from April 30th and May 1st. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Claims.
Move it.
Second.
Moved by Fishback, second by Kempley to approve claims. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
HR report.
Move.
Second. Moved by Sutton, second by Fishback to approve the HR report. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
They're just in the process of accumulating the surplus sale items. I think I have the majority of it in this packet to declare surplus for sale, but we will go out before the sale on Friday morning and take an inventory. So there might be some miscellaneous items show up that
You've got like all the big
department
vehicles and the
sheets.
department sheets and all that, and there's file cabinets and some unrecognizable pieces of stuff that end up out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's no problem. I mean, from our standpoint.
So I would need, I'll move it,
Yeah.
declare it surplus. Yeah.
Second.
Motion by Hanson, second by Sutton to declare item surplus for the May 11th sale. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Whedon Pest Grant Award, approve and authorize chair to sign.
Second. Moved by Kempley, second by Fishback to approve the grant for the weed and pest. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The lease for the Celtic Fair, and I don't know why they've got news here. I think that's a typo from, yeah, whoever, they used an old lease and didn't quite clean it up. So I think it's just Celtic Fair and Games.
And are they using it doesn't say Centennial, they're just using the lawn. This is something
Right,
different, right?
Centennial
May?
is different.
May?
This is for the games only, the way I understood it.
Well,
The lease was
that's
the
the
game.
county property they're leasing.
Yeah.
They'll work directly with Centennial for the village.
But is this something else? Because I thought the date of it was like in May.
May,
Well, that's not the Celtic Fair, that's something else.
I don't know. Celtic Fair, I thought that was more in August, September.
August or
So they
September.
must be doing a fundraiser or something else with it.
Accurate Highland.
Do we need to wait to get a clean copy? Who typed it up? They give
It
us
was
one
with
real
Kurt,
quick.
wasn't it?
Kurt did. Okay, I wonder if he
There's a
could
sheet
just,
back here, there.
Oh, okay, Saturday, May 19th. Okay, it's a special event.
It's not the
This
Celtic
isn't
Fair,
fair.
it's some games thing.
Okay.
Kung Fu fighting.
Yeah,
Really?
I'd move it.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Kempley, second by Sutton, to approve the lease with the Celtic Fair News.
No, it isn't news. I
Okay,
think that's...
Celtic Fair. Okay.
Celtic Fair, because I think they use the Aberdeen American News lease and didn't get the news out of there.
All in favor?
Does that mean there's a new newspaper in town?
Motion carried.
It's written in Gaelic, too.
And that's all I have.
Good, then nobody will understand it.
Gary, do you have anything for us?
A couple of things, we wanted to discuss the health plan, which direction you want to go.
I did some numbers, and I think Gary kind of worked some same numbers, and if we were to make the change, I'll leave the name off for now, we could end up, we would have to increase our family coverage to 55%, the county would pay 55 instead of 50, to maintain the same premium that they would retain if the new rate we got from Medica. It actually would be $4 a month cheaper, and it would still end up saving the county about $71,500 a year by making the switch over to Blue Cross Blue Shield, with us increasing 55% for family coverage.
That makes sense where it
And what
really
was it,
hurts.
2 or 3 years ago? How long have we been in Medica now? 3
Two.
years?
This is the third year.
Third
Third, just, well, it'd be the
Blue
third
Cross Blue
year
Shield, we had them for how many years, and they wouldn't even bid 2 years ago, now they're back.
Yeah, well, we were getting, it was like $100 more a month the last bid we got, so this is really a good quote, we're doing good health-wise.
No
so
kidding, I've never
that's
seen, we've never
encouraging.
had it go down.
Do we need to put this on the agenda for next week to make a decision?
It's just discussion, whatever you thought. I mean, do you have any other
Better
opinions?
health.
What?
Well, we know it's a good insurance, I mean,
I think we
Well,
should
it
put
is.
it on next week's agenda to
I
make
think so.
decisions, so payroll knows what we're gonna do.
Okay,
Because we're in open enrollment during
Yeah.
May, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
so,
yeah.
Yeah, because I like the proposal.
Put on the
I think
agenda,
that-
bring the contract in next week.
Yeah.
If anyone who has a problem, they
They
can
can
let us
call,
know.
yeah.
The 55%
yeah,
and 45%.
45, were you 45?
Employee share.
Okay, sounds good, thank you. They had mentioned to Max Eflack did about a ID theft program that they have, that they offer, that it'd be free for a year, but then it's $6 per employee from there on out, and
Per month?
yeah, and so
What kind of ID?
right now, your
Identity
identity theft, right now, we only have a handful of people that have that coverage, and so unless you feel like you need to have all the employees involved and want to pay the $6 per employee starting next year, I didn't really
There's
see
a lot
a
of,
point
there's
in changing.
a lot of places they can do that on their own.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
It'd be all or none, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, I don't think we
No,
Sounds
commit to
good.
everybody.
The judge stopped by sheriff's office yesterday, and he wants the court security in place by May 21. So basically, the machines were brought down yesterday, the scanner and the metal detector, and so they're gonna try and ramp up. So the question was, do you want to close the doors now and get people used to it, or do you want to wait a week, or do you want to...
I told Judy this morning, the sooner you lock it, the sooner people are gonna
I
get used to
agree.
it.
I agree.
Let's do it today then.
And I know
Maybe
that,
send out an email though, so everybody knows.
Yep.
And that they know that if they bring unauthorized
Yep,
people
that
through.
they have to go
They remember
around.
their phone or fob to get through.
it's gonna be an inconvenience, but the sooner they get used to it, the sooner they're used to it.
Sounds good. That's all I had.
Max, you got everything that you need? Anything else to come before the commission?
no, we should probably talk
We'll save
about
that
this
when
in
it's
exec, but
quiet.
we should probably have Chris here when we do it, huh?
Yeah. Order 270 with courts.
About that proposal.
On their phone?
I,
Yeah.
I don't think we have to act on that today. I just talked to Gene and Russ, and they thought possibly by the end of the day, they would have the numbers for us again, much like they did last time.
Good.
Because it...
For 6 years, 11 through
Right,
16.
because they've got everything programmed in, all they need to do is change the levies and the assessment value for that township that year, and then that number will come out, and they felt pretty comfortable that maybe by the end of the day they could have that. So I think once we get that, I think then we can make a decision, go to exec and talk to Chris. I'd be curious to know what the numbers are myself.
Yeah, I can't commit till we see the numbers.
Right.
Hi, is Bruce out of court yet?
So,
Okay, 'cause the commission was asking if you could come back.
So we'll know more next week anyway.
Yep.
All right, I'll let you know, thank you.
11 through 16, correct.
Thank you very much. Fill in?
Anything else to come before the commission? Not hearing anything, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Sutton, second by Kifley. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.